Hello and welcome to the first session of the Beyond the Basics webinar series. We will be doing in a few weeks' time a session 2, and that will cover the Google Workspace, Visio, HCL Notes, data at rest, and some digital rights management that takes you beyond the basics in the data classification environment. I'll just move on to the first session now. But before I do that, let me introduce myself. So my name is Piers Chivers. I'm a product manager with responsibility for the data classification solutions that are delivered by HelpSystems. I'd worked for a number of years now in data classification. Indeed, I've helped many customers worldwide implement and deploy their data classification solutions. Today, I'd like to take you through why I believe the best of breed data classification solution is essential for meeting your data protection and data security needs. And I'll cover off some of those requirements around that. And then move on to why I think HelpSystems delivers that and provides a best of breed solution. And especially going into the specialist areas, so beyond the basics, which are the basics are delivered by one or two of our competitors, but I think you'll see how it's essential to get beyond the basics. So as you know, I'm sure everyone on this listening now will know that cybersecurity requires best of breed. The bad guys don't care what you're using. In fact, they would enjoy if you're using something that isn't best of breed. So it does require it really to give you your best data protection. You need the best technology available. Really, compromise doesn't cut it. And I'd really strongly advise against using a lower end solution that just because it is a single pane of glass, if you like. I've seen this and heard customers talk about this. Uh, really, just because it's part of a wider platform, you should not be locked into using something that isn't best of breed. Of course, I'd love it if you used all the HelpSystems products in our data security portfolio. We have data classification, which I'll talk about today, digital rights management, data loss prevention, anti-phishing, vulnerability assessment tools, the secure file transfer, and many more, really. And I really would like it if you purchased all of those from us, of course. But I recognize that you likely have many, if not all of those solutions already in some variety or other. And therefore, you really need a vendor, especially in a data classification area, that works with your existing security tools, rather works with than against. So I'd really urge you to avoid vendor lock-in. So beyond the basics, I'm sure everyone, very likely nearly everyone listening is using the standard Microsoft Office product set. But I'd like actually just to take a moment, or you to take a moment to think about where your most sensitive data is, the crown jewels of your organization. If you just pause for a moment and think about what is the most critical information in your organization, and where does it reside, and what sort of systems are those critical information assets being processed in? And I can tell you at HelpSystems, it's our intellectual property. We're a tech company. It's what we sell is our intellectual property. So we obviously don't want to lose that inappropriately or it to be accidentally or maliciously misused. So intellectual property is our crown jewels, if you like, but also our financial data. And this is true, I'm sure, for very many organizations, if not all. Our financial data is regulations that set down how we should process our financial data, but also it just makes good confidential or good sense from a confidential perspective to manage that financial data. Also, our personally identifiable information of ourselves, our own employees, of our suppliers and contractors, and our customers, of course. And we're mandated through regulations like GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, and CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act. We are mandated, and there are other privacy laws that are either extant or in production around the world that mean our PII is critical. So yeah, intellectual property, PII, financial data at HelpSystems. I'm sure this is likely, when you thought for a moment, you likely have the same sort of sensitive data that you need to control. But where is it? And I would say, in terms of financial and personal, to give you a personal example, I received my pension statement from HelpSystems recently, and that's both personal and financial. So you need a classification system that can let you identify multiple facets of an information asset. You need to go beyond the basics. So what I'll be covering today is the use of your critical information assets on Mac systems, being processed in CAD solutions, as it's passed through a Microsoft Exchange system, if it's stored in a cloud system such as SharePoint, Dropbox, or Box. And finally, I'll finish by just a quick, brief discussion about the in-depth reporting capabilities you need to prove that your data classification solution is meeting your expectations and needs. So let's start with the Mac systems. Likely, when you were just thinking a moment ago about the critical information assets, you likely were thinking about high-end executives, and they tend to favor and like the Mac devices. And we have a solution that extends Outlook, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint from Office for Mac. And this sort of works well in a hybrid environment. So if your executives are using Mac, it's likely that the rest of the employees are on a Windows system. And you really need a system or a data classification solution that can cope with both those environments and will interoperate as content is shared between the Mac systems and the Windows systems. And this will give you confidence then that your compliance is working across the whole platform infrastructure that you have. So as I say, we do extend Outlook, PowerPoint, Word, and Excel from Office for Mac. We are supporting the Big Sur and Monterey Mac releases. And clearly, if you're an executive or perhaps someone in the design team or just a standard employee using a Mac, you want a consistent interface. So we have that. So this is the same look and feel that you get from your Windows environment. And you can see there the ease with which you can classify content on a Mac device. So you're getting straightforward classification. You get visual markings, metadata, all key, of course. So the visual markings help the end users. The metadata helps your downstream data security tools. You get classification enforcement. So you can say, for example, if you're saving a Word document, it must be classified. And we get some control sharing and data loss prevention so that you don't send the wrong content to the wrong place or the wrong recipients. And all of this is managed in a unified administration interface, which helps your administrators and your operators. There's one pane of glass in that respect. They don't have to swivel the chair and configure it in a different place. So now I move on to CAD. So again, if you thought about your information assets, if you're in the manufacturing, defense, design, or even other market sectors, you likely have CAD tools like DraftSite and AutoCAD, which I'll talk about today, AutoCAD from Autodesk. And that is likely got your high-end intellectual property in those drawings or those CAD drawings. And it's key here to show that the CAD labeling can interwork and interface with the other data classification tool sets that you have. And I'll cover this in just a moment with the SharePoint environment. ISO 27001 does mandate, or at least recommend, that you do labeling. So this helps you towards that certification. And like the other data classification tools that we have, this can drive your downstream data security solutions such as DLP or archive or gateways. So you can see here just a screen image of an AutoCAD, Autodesk image, and how simple it is to apply the label, click the classify button, and up comes the familiar labeling interface. Again, same sort of look and feel as your other environments. And again, even within CAD, which can be very complicated tools, you want a straightforward label selection. You want those visual and metadata markings. You want those classification rules that state, for example, you must classify or you should not downgrade, and so on and so forth. You need that enhanced data loss prevention. And on all of this, all of the above, can be managed and operated through the unified administration interface. Of course, all this information is likely flowing through a Microsoft Exchange system. Now we have a solution for Exchange on-prem, which allows you to manage the distribution of emails and to manage the labels of those as they flow through your system, either going out of your business or organization or being received from external, your suppliers, customers, and contractors, and so on. And I'll explain how this works in just on the next slide. But I will say as well, we don't have a product extension for Exchange Online, the Office 365 Exchange. That's because Microsoft limits the extensibility of their Exchange servers in the cloud, perhaps not unreasonably, but they do. But we do have capabilities, similar capabilities. So please reach out to us if you are working with Exchange Online, and some of the problems which I'll highlight on the next slide are evident to you. In terms of sending information out of the system, we often, when the reply comes back, we lose the label of the document, or rather the email. In this case, Exchange Classifier has the capability to reapply the label as the message comes back into your system. And it may have come back in from external, as in the you send it to an external party, or it may have come back in because one of your employees is using a mobile device that does not have labeling capability on it. We can also add standard last line of text or safeguarding instructions for particular partners based on who you're sending it to. You might want a footer in the email that sort of warns them or instructs them on how to handle particularly sensitive information, and so on. So I'll move on to SharePoint now. You're likely using SharePoint for document repositories, either on-prem or online. Our SharePoint capability has a familiar and intuitive interface which fits with the SharePoint look and feel. And using this helps you save time by classifying all your documents as they're stored within the SharePoint system. And the visual markings in the browser interface, which you'll see in a moment on the next slide, will indicate to the users the sensitivity of the information. So as we can see here on the screen on the right hand side, we have 3 columns, and this information, this sales report, is classified as confidential financial, and it's a very clear and obvious interface for the end users to see the sensitivity of their information whilst it's stored in SharePoint. Indeed, the classifying of the information whilst it's in SharePoint is straightforward. Just clicking on the classify button, and then you get a familiar, although in a browser, but a familiar look and feel to how you label your information. And then, yeah, as I say, it's a straightforward label selection. You get that visual feedback. You can label any file type in SharePoint, which is useful, not just the standard Office documents, but also other types that may hold your intellectual property. There's label propagation. So if you do use an Office document such as Word and use classification capability in there to label your Word document, the label on that Word document will be propagated to SharePoint as it's uploaded. And again, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but we have a unified administration experience. You may not be using SharePoint, or you may be using it, but also using an additional cloud storage solution such as Box or Dropbox. And again, you need, if you're using those environments, you need to go beyond the basics and help make sure that your information in those repositories is controlled appropriately. And we use the Box governance system, which is part of it's out of the excuse the pun. It's out of the box for Box, the Box governance capability, and we can drive that based on the label of the document as it's put into Box. We also quarantine sensitive information, so you can only store a certain level of sensitivity in Box and prevent confidential or particularly sensitive documents being uploaded altogether. And we use the Box governance system, which is shown here. This is the Box administration facility, and you can see that public in this case, or documents labeled public, can be distributed to anyone in the whole wide world, whereas restricted is just to company and collaborators, and confidential is just your local collaborators only. And we drive that really using the classification of the label, or rather the label of the document content. So we're preserving the classification, quarantine sensitive data, and it's a unified classification policy across all your platforms. We're sort of stressing that in this beyond the basics, not just Windows, it's Mac, Windows, Box, SharePoint, so on and so forth. And I know I have mentioned it, but I'll say it again, it's a unified administration experience. So that just leaves me really with the reporting capabilities. Really and truly, when you put in an effective data classification solution, you need to know that it's working as expected and that your end users are classifying appropriately and storing your sensitive content in the right places or sending them in email to the right destinations. And we have that capability with our reporting system. It will monitor and report on all classification events across some of the products or all the products I've just referred to. And it provides you vital knowledge, management information and business information to both the management and the compliance teams, and indeed the governance teams as well. And you're not obliged to use our reporting. You can interface the events that we generate and put them into your favorite SIEM tool, security information event monitoring tools. And this really just gives you the confidence that your data classification solution is working and is fit for purpose. And this is just a brief look at the interface. It's a web-based solution. You can see it's made up of dashboards and reports. It's a role-based system. And in this case, I'm showing 4 dashboards. If you look at the one on the left, the classification summary for the top 10 users. If I go to the next slide, this is that dashboard. And you can see the confidential value, confidential classification values being selected, and I can see the top 10 users using that value. If you look top right in the last year, and I can see that Joanne Burns is ahead and is using confidential the most. Top in the top 10 list of users using these values, and you could drill through and find out who's using confidential financial. And if Joanne Burns doesn't operate in the financial department and would not normally be processing that type of information, this gives you a good awareness. Either Joanne is doing the wrong thing, or the business doesn't quite understand how it's operating. It works both ways. So this intelligence is really helpful. And it goes beyond just classification. It tells you about what's happening across your business in terms of what's being stored where. So that brings me to the summary, really. Hopefully you can see to get beyond the basics, you need a data classification capability that fits your business, not the other way around. Please don't use vendors who make you bend your business to fit their technology. That's just not right. And you likely, as I said earlier, if you considered where your sensitive content is, you likely thought that through and thought it's beyond the standard Microsoft product set. Although a lot of it will be in Excel, of course, or Word, or PowerPoint, or indeed Outlook. But I'm sure much of your content is beyond those platforms. Yes, so you need something that goes beyond the basics of those standard Office products. And really, I hope you can see you're welcome to consult the experts at HelpSystems. They can provide quality advice. I've, as said at the start, I've done many successful deployments of data classification systems, and so have my colleagues. And we have best-of-breed solutions to take data classification beyond the basics. Okay, so with apologies for the interruption halfway through. I hope that was helpful for you. I hope you got some value from that. If you did, or you have any questions or any points to make, you can see our contact details there. Please info@helpsystems.com or the website helpsystems.com again. So on that, I think I shall just conclude. I wish you the best for the rest of the day, and conclude by saying thank you for joining us. Thank you.